I never thought the woman who called me her daughter, who hugged me so warmly when I first stepped into her home, could hide something so dark, all because of a cold bowl of rice left untouched on the table. Let me take you back to where it all started. My name's Sarah, and I'm just like any of you, someone trying to build a life, love fiercely, and hold on to hope even when things get messy. A year ago, I married David, the kind of guy who makes you believe in forever. He's got this laugh that fills a room, and when he looks at you, it's like nothing else matters. We met in college, back when I was juggling late-night study sessions and a part-time job at a coffee shop. He'd come in every Thursday, order the same black coffee, and leave me little notes on napkins. Silly stuff like, "You're out of my league, but I'm shooting my shot anyway." I still have those napkins, tucked away in a shoebox under our bed. When David proposed, it wasn't some grand gesture. We were hiking, sweaty and out of breath, and he just stopped, looked at me and said, "I don't want to do life without you." That was it. No ring yet. He'd spent all his savings fixing his car. But I didn't care. I said yes. And a few months later, we were married in a small backyard ceremony. His mum, Linda, was there, beaming like I was her own. She pulled me aside after the vows, held my hands and said, "You're the daughter I always wanted." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She'd spent months helping us plan, sewing table runners herself because we couldn't afford fancy ones. Everyone said I was lucky to have a mother-in-law like her. We moved into David's childhood home to save money. It's a cozy place, a little worn but full of memories. Photos of David as a kid line the hallway, his old baseball trophies still on a shelf. Linda insisted we live with her. Plenty of room, she said, and I'd love the company. David thought it was a great idea, and I didn't mind. I grew up in a loud, crowded house, so sharing space felt normal. Plus, Linda was so welcoming. She'd cook these huge breakfasts, pancakes, eggs, the works, and tell me stories about David's awkward teenage years. I'd laugh so hard I'd choke on my orange juice. For a while, it felt like I'd found a second family. But then, something shifted. It was small at first, so subtle I almost didn't notice. About 6 months in, Linda started acting different. She'd always been the type to fuss over me, cutting me extra slices of pie, asking if I was warm enough. But one evening, I came home late from work, and there was no plate saved for me. The kitchen was spotless, like dinner never happened. I figured she forgot, so I grabbed some leftovers and didn't think much of it. But it kept happening. A week later, I walked in and Linda was clearing the table. "Oh, Sarah," she said, barely looking up. "I didn't know you'd be home. We already ate." Her voice was flat. Not cold exactly, but off. David shrugged it off when I mentioned it. "Mum's just tired," he said. "She's not used to cooking for 3 every night." I tried to brush it aside. Maybe I was reading too much into it. I mean, I'd seen those Reddit threads about nightmare in-laws, but Linda wasn't like that. She was the woman who'd knitted me a scarf for Christmas, who'd cried at our wedding. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Then came the rice. One night, I got home early and offered to help with dinner. Linda waved me off. "No need," she said. "It's just rice and some chicken." But when we sat down, she served David and herself these steaming plates, chicken, veggies, the works. My plate? A small scoop of plain rice, cold, like it had been sitting out for hours. I stared at it, my fork hovering. "Is this all there is?" I asked, trying to laugh it off. Linda smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You don't need much," she said. "Besides, you're always saying you want to eat light." I wasn't. I'd never said that. David didn't notice, he was too busy talking about his day, but I felt my stomach twist. It wasn't about the food. It was the way she looked at me, like I was an outsider in her house. From then on, meals got weirder. She'd cook elaborate dinners for her and David, but for me, it was always something small, separate. A slice of bread, a bowl of soup gone lukewarm. Once, just a single boiled egg. I'd eat in silence, the clink of my spoon louder than any conversation. I started wondering if I'd done something wrong. Was I not helping enough? Was she mad I wasn't pregnant yet? David and I were trying, but nothing had happened. Maybe she resented that, thought I wasn't pulling my weight as a wife. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I told myself I was being dramatic, that this was just how families worked sometimes. But the doubts kept creeping in like cracks spreading through glass. I'd catch Linda watching me, not with warmth anymore, but with this strange guarded look, like she was sizing me up. I tried talking to David, but he'd just say, "Mum's got her quirks. Don't take it personally." Easy for him to say. He wasn't the one eating cold rice while everyone else got a feast. Then, one night, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, work stress, plus the weirdness with Linda was eating at me. I got up for a glass of water, tiptoeing past her room so I wouldn't wake her. Her door was cracked open, just enough for me to hear her voice, low and sharp. She was on the phone. I froze, not meaning to eavesdrop, but her words stopped me cold. "She doesn't belong here," she said. "I've tried, but it's not working. We need to do something, soon." My heart pounded so loud I thought she'd hear it. Who was she talking about? Me? And what did she mean, do something? I stood there, rooted to the spot, until I heard her hang up. I slipped back to bed, my mind racing. I wanted to wake David, to tell him everything. But what would I say? That I'd heard his mum say something vague? He'd think I was paranoid. The next morning, I could barely look at Linda. She acted normal, humming as she made coffee, but I couldn't shake what I'd heard. It was like a splinter in my mind, digging deeper every time she smiled at me. I kept replaying her words, trying to make sense of them. Was she planning to kick me out? Was there something worse? I felt like I was living in a house of secrets, and I was the only one who didn't know the truth. That's when I decided I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I had to figure out what was going on, even if it meant uncovering something I wasn't ready for. I couldn't stop hearing those words in my head, Linda's voice sharp and secretive saying, "She doesn't belong here." It was like a song stuck on repeat, haunting me every time I walked past her in the hallway or sat across from her at the table. I kept wondering what I'd done to make her feel that way. Was it something I said, something I didn't do, or was it just me? I'd always thought I was enough for David, enough for this family, but now I wasn't so sure. The days after I overheard her phone call felt heavier, like the air in the house had thickened. I tried to act normal, to smile when Linda offered me coffee, or asked about my day, but my skin prickled every time she looked at me. I started noticing things I hadn't before, the way she'd linger by the kitchen counter, watching me eat those pitiful meals she'd set out. Cold rice, a slice of plain bread, sometimes nothing at all if I got home too late. It wasn't just neglect. It felt deliberate, like she was testing me, waiting for me to crack. I'd catch her muttering under her breath, too, little things I couldn't quite make out, but that left a sour taste in my mouth. Once, as I was leaving the kitchen, I swear I heard her say, "Not long now." Not long until what? I didn't know how to bring it up with David. He was so busy with work, always coming home exhausted, and the last thing I wanted was to sound like I was picking a fight over his mum. But it was eating me alive. One night, after Linda went to bed, I pulled him aside in the living room. The TV was on low, some rerun of a sitcom we weren't really watching. I took a deep breath and said, "David, have you noticed anything weird with your mum lately?" He frowned, leaning back on the couch. "Weird how?" I hesitated, picking at the hem of my sweater. "She's been different with me, like she barely talks to me anymore, and the food thing. It's like she doesn't want me to eat with you guys." I hated how small my voice sounded, like I was whining. David sighed, rubbing his temples. "Sarah, you're overthinking it. Mum's just set in her ways. She's always been picky about meals and stuff. Maybe she thinks you don't like her cooking." I stared at him, my chest tightening. "David, it's not about her cooking. It's like she's punishing me. And the other night, I heard her on the phone saying I don't belong here." His eyes widened for a second, but then he shook his head. "You probably misheard. Mom loves you. She's always talking about how happy she is you're here." I wanted to believe him, I really did, but the way he brushed it off felt like a slap. "Can you at least talk to her?" I asked. He nodded, but it was half-hearted, like he was humouring me. Sure, babe, I'll mention it. He didn't. Or if he did, nothing changed. If anything, things got worse. A few days later, I came home to find Linda in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. The smell was incredible. Garlic, herbs, the kind of meal that makes your mouth water. I smiled, hoping maybe this was her way of smoothing things over. That smells amazing, I said, setting my bag down. She didn't turn around. It's for David, she said, her voice clipped. He's had a long day. I stood there, waiting for her to offer me some, but she didn't. Instead, she ladled out a single bowl of plain oatmeal and slid it across the counter. This is for you, she said. Oatmeal. At 7 p.m., I looked at the bowl, then at her, and something in me snapped. Linda, why do you keep doing this? Why am I always eating something different? My voice shook louder than I meant it to be. She finally looked at me, her eyes narrow and cold. Doing what, Sarah? I'm making sure you're fed. Some people would be grateful. Grateful? For oatmeal while she and David ate like kings? I opened my mouth to argue, but David walked in right then, loosening his tie. What's going on? He asked, glancing between us. I waited for Linda to say something, to explain herself, but she just smiled, that same tight, fake smile, and said, Nothing, honey. Sarah's just tired. I felt my face burn. Tired? No, I was furious, humiliated, but David didn't push. He grabbed his plate, kissed his mum on the cheek, and sat down like nothing was wrong. I left my oatmeal untouched and went to bed, my stomach growling but my pride too bruised to care. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I kept thinking about my life before this house, before Linda's shadow loomed over everything. I'd been happy, maybe not perfect, but happy. I had friends, a job I liked, dreams of starting a family with David. Now, I felt like a guest in my own marriage, tiptoeing around a woman who seemed to hate me for reasons I couldn't understand. I started replaying every moment since I'd moved in, searching for clues. There was that time, a few months back, when Linda had asked me about my family, my parents, my childhood. I'd told her about my mom passing when I was young, how my dad raised me alone. She'd listened so intently, nodding, but afterward she'd gotten quiet, almost distant. I hadn't thought much of it then, but now it felt significant, like a piece of a puzzle I didn't yet have. The breaking point came a week later. I'd started keeping a little journal, jotting down the strange things Linda did, just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. The separate meals, the muttered comments, the way she'd lock her bedroom door at night, like she didn't trust me. I know it sounds paranoid, but it helped me feel less crazy. Then one afternoon, I came home early and found her in my room. Our room, mine and David's. She was standing by the dresser holding something small, like a bottle. When she saw me, she flinched, shoving it into her pocket. What are you doing in here? I asked, my heart racing. She straightened up, smoothing her apron. Just tidying up, she said, but her voice was too quick, too sharp. You don't need to be in here for that, I said, stepping closer. For a second I thought she'd argue, but she just brushed past me and left without another word. I tore through the dresser after she was gone, looking for whatever she'd been holding. Nothing seemed out of place. No bottle, no clue. But I couldn't shake the image of her standing there, caught, like I'd walked in on a secret she didn't want me to know. I confronted David that night, no holding back. I told him about the meals, the phone call, her being in our room. Something's wrong, David, I said, tears burning my eyes. Your mom's hiding something and I can't keep pretending it's fine. He looked at me. Really looked at me. And for a moment I thought he'd finally get it. But then he sighed, his shoulders slumping. Sarah, you're making this bigger than it is. Mom's not perfect, but she's not... Whatever you're thinking. Can we just drop it? Drop it? I couldn't. Not anymore. The next morning, I waited until Linda left for her weekly grocery run. I don't know what came over me, desperation maybe, but I went into her room. I'd never done anything like that before, never snooped, but I had to know. Her room was neat, almost too neat, like a stage set. I checked the nightstand, the dresser, under the bed. Nothing. Then I opened her closet and there, tucked behind a stack of sweaters, was a small wooden box. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a vial, no label, just clear liquid and a folded piece of paper. I unfolded it, my breath catching. It was a list, ingredients, measurements, words I didn't understand. At the bottom, in Linda's handwriting, was a single sentence: make sure she takes it. I stood there, the paper trembling in my hands, as the truth started to sink in. Linda wasn't just pushing me away, she was planning something far worse. And the worst part? I had no idea why. Ixy-ix. That piece of paper burned in my hands, Linda's handwriting staring back at me like a confession carved in stone. Make sure she takes it. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My mind raced, piecing together every cold bowl of rice, every locked door, every time she'd watched me with that unreadable look. This wasn't just a mother-in-law being petty. This was something darker, something deliberate. I shoved the vial and paper back into the box, my hands shaking so badly I could barely close the lid. I had to get out of her room before she came back, but my legs felt like they'd forgotten how to move. What was in that vial? Was it meant for me? And why? I made it back to my bedroom, locking the door behind me as if that would keep the truth from following. I sat on the bed, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of it all. Part of me wanted to believe I'd misunderstood, that the vial was just medicine, that the note meant nothing. But deep down I knew better. Linda had been pulling away for months, treating me like I didn't belong, and now I had proof she was hiding something that felt like a threat. I couldn't stay quiet anymore, but confronting her terrified me. What if she denied it? What if she turned it around, made me look crazy, and David, would he even believe me? I didn't have long to think. The front door creaked open downstairs. Linda was back. I heard her humming, the rustle of grocery bags, like nothing was wrong. It made my skin crawl, how she could act so normal while hiding something so sinister. I stayed in my room until David got home, pacing, rehearsing what I'd say. When I finally heard his voice, I forced myself downstairs. Linda was in the kitchen chopping vegetables, and David was loosening his tie asking about her day. It was so ordinary, so painfully normal that for a second I doubted myself. But the image of that vial flashed in my mind, and I knew I couldn't let it go. David, we need to talk, I said, my voice louder than I meant. He looked up, surprised, and Linda's knife paused mid-chop. Can it wait? He asked, glancing at his mom. I'm starving. I shook my head, my heart pounding. No, it can't. Linda turned then, her eyes locking onto mine, and for the first time I saw something flicker in her face. Fear, maybe, or anger. What's this about, Sarah? She asked, her voice calm but edged with something sharp. I swallowed, my throat dry. I found something into your room today. A vial, a note. It said, make sure she takes it. What is it, Linda? What are you planning? The kitchen went silent. David's fork clattered onto his plate. Linda didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at me like I'd slapped her. Then she laughed, a short, brittle sound that made my stomach twist. You were in my room, she said, her voice rising. Snooping through my things? That's what you do in my house? I felt my face burn, but I stood my ground. I had to. You've been acting strange for months, giving me scraps to eat, whispering behind my back. I heard you on the phone, saying I don't belong here. And now this. What's in that vial, Linda? Tell me. David stood up, his chair scraping the floor. Sarah, calm down. What are you talking about? I turned to him, tears stinging my eyes. I'm talking about your mum hiding something dangerous. I found it, David, a vial, a note in her handwriting. She's planning something and you're just sitting there like it's nothing. He looked at Linda, then back at me, his face a mix of confusion and frustration. Mum, what's she talking about? He asked. But his tone wasn't urgent, not like I needed it to be. Linda set her knife down, slow and deliberate, and crossed her arms. I don't know what you think you saw, Sarah, but you're blowing this out of proportion. That vial, it's just herbal tea extract, something I've been taking for years. The note's for my own reminder. I'm not as young as I used to be. Her voice was steady, almost convincing, but I saw the way her fingers tightened around her apron. Tea extract? I snapped. In an unmarked vial hidden in a box, with a note that sounds like you're drugging someone. I'm not stupid, Linda. Enough! David shouted, slamming his hand on the table. I flinched, and Linda's eyes flicked to him, quick and calculating. Sarah, you're accusing my mum of… what, poisoning you? Over some bottle you found? This is insane! His words hit like a punch. Insane. That's what he thought of me. I looked at him, the man I loved, the man I'd promised my life to, and felt like I was staring at a stranger. David, I said, my voice breaking, I'm scared. I'm living in a house where I don't feel safe, and you're telling me I'm crazy for it? Linda stepped forward, her face softening, but it felt rehearsed, like a mask slipping into place. Sarah, honey, I know things have been tense. I haven't been myself, I'll admit that. But I'd never hurt you. You're my son's wife. She reached out like she might touch my arm, but I stepped back. Don't, I said. I don't trust you. Her hand froze, and for a split second I saw something raw in her eyes. Anger, maybe. Or something deeper. Then it was gone, replaced by that same fake concern. David threw his hands up. I can't deal with this right now. You two figure it out. He grabbed his keys and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. I stood there alone with Linda, the air thick with everything unsaid. She didn't speak, just turned back to her cutting board and started chopping again, like I wasn't even there. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I felt so small, so powerless. I went back to my room, locked the door, and cried until my chest ached. I'd never felt so alone, not just in that house, but in my marriage, in my life. The next few days were unbearable. David barely spoke to me, his silence louder than any argument. Linda went back to acting normal, too normal, like she was trying to erase what happened. But I couldn't unsee that vial, couldn't unhear her voice on the phone. I started eating out, avoiding her meals altogether, but it didn't help. I was jumping at shadows, second-guessing every sip of water, every creak in the house. I even called my dad, just to hear a voice I trusted, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him everything. How do you explain that your mother-in-law might be plotting against you? That your husband doesn't have your back? Then came the moment that broke me. It was late, maybe midnight, and I was in bed, scrolling through my phone to distract myself. David was working late, again. I heard footsteps outside my door, soft but deliberate, and my heart stopped. I sat up, listening as they paused right outside. Then, a faint clink, like glass on wood. I waited, barely breathing, until the footsteps faded. When I opened the door, there was a glass of water on the floor, a small pill beside it. No note, no explanation, just there. I stared at it, my pulse roaring in my ears. Was this it? Was this what the vial was for? I didn't touch it. I grabbed my phone and took a picture, my hands trembling so much the image blurred. Then I packed a bag, clothes, my wallet, those napkin notes from David, and left. I didn't know where I was going, just that I couldn't stay in that house another second. I drove to a motel, checked in, and sat on the stiff bed, trying to piece together what my life had become. I kept thinking about Linda's face, her fake tears, and David's silence. But more than that, I kept thinking about myself, how I'd let it get this far, how I'd tried so hard to be the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law, that I'd lost sight of who I was. The next morning, I got a text from David. "Where are you? We need to talk." I didn't reply. Not yet. But as I sat there staring at that glass and pill in my mind, something clicked. I wasn't just a victim in this story. I was done being afraid. I was going to find out the truth, no matter what it cost me. And when I did, Linda would have to answer for everything. Sitting in that motel room, the hum of the air conditioner filling the silence, I felt like I was waking up from a bad dream, only to realize the nightmare was my life. That glass of water and pill outside my door kept flashing in my mind, a question mark I couldn't ignore. I'd spent months shrinking, swallowing my doubts, trying to keep the peace, but I was done. Done with Linda's games, done with David's excuses, done with pretending I was okay when I wasn't. For the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of something fierce inside me. I wasn't just going to run, I was going to fight for the truth. I spent the next day piecing things together. I pulled up the photo of the glass and pill on my phone, zooming in like it might reveal some hidden clue. It didn't, but it was proof. Proof I wasn't imagining things. I thought about going to the police, but what would I say? My mother-in-law left me a suspicious pill. I had no evidence of what it was, no lab to test it. Instead, I called my best friend Emma, who'd been my rock since college. I hadn't told her much before, too ashamed maybe, but now I spilled everything. The cold meals, the phone call, the vial, the note, the pill. She listened without interrupting, and when I was done, she said, "Sarah, you need to get out of that house for good, and you need to confront David. He's your husband. He owes you answers." She was right. I texted David back, keeping it short. "I'm safe. Meet me at the coffee shop on 5th tomorrow noon." I didn't sleep much that night, my mind churning with what I'd say, what he'd say, what I'd do if he still took Linda's side. By morning I was exhausted but resolved. I wasn't the same Sarah who'd tiptoed around that house, afraid of rocking the boat. I deserved better, and I was going to demand it. The coffee shop was busy when I got there, the smell of espresso grounding me as I scanned for David. He was already at a corner table looking like he hadn't slept either. Dark circles under his eyes, his hair messy like he'd been running his hands through it. When he saw me, he stood, but I didn't hug him. I sat down, clutching my bag with the photo of the pill, ready on my phone. "Sarah," he started, his voice low. "Why'd you leave like that? I've been worried sick." I almost laughed. Worried? He hadn't seemed worried when he walked out during our fight. "I left because I don't feel safe," I said, cutting through his words. "Not with your mum. Not with you." His face fell, but I kept going. "I found a vial in her room, David, a note saying, 'Make sure she takes it.' Then, last night, there was a pill outside our door. What am I supposed to think? That she's leaving me vitamins?" I slid my phone across the table, the photo glaring up at him. He stared at it, his jaw tight, and for a second I thought he'd get it. But then he pushed the phone back, shaking his head. "This is too much, Sarah. You're spinning a whole conspiracy out of nothing. Mum's not some villain. She's my mum." I felt like I'd been slapped, but I didn't back down. "Then explain it," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "Explain the vial, the note, the way she treats me like I'm invisible. If it's nothing, why won't you ask her? Why won't you stand up for me?" He looked away, his hands balling into fists. "I don't know, okay? Maybe she's stressed. Maybe she doesn't like sharing the house, but she's not poisoning you or whatever you think." I leaned forward, forcing him to meet my eyes. "David, I'm your wife. I'm telling you I'm scared, and you're acting like it's my fault. If you can't support me, what are we even doing?" He didn't answer, just stared at the table, and that silence said more than any words could. I stood up, my chair scraping the floor. "I'm not coming back until I know the truth," I said. "And if you won't help me find it, I'll do it myself." I walked out, my heart pounding but my head clear. For the first time, I wasn't begging for his approval. I was choosing myself. I spent the next week at Emma's, sleeping on her couch and rebuilding my strength. I got a lawyer's number, just in case, and started looking for apartments. But I couldn't let it go. Not yet. I needed to know why Linda hated me, what she'd planned with that vial. So I did something risky. I called Linda's sister, Diane, who'd always been kind to me at family gatherings. I didn't know if she'd believe me, but I had to try. Over the phone, I told her everything, my voice shaking as I described the vial and note. Diane was quiet for a long time, then said, "Sarah, there's something you need to know about Linda, but it's not my story to tell. Come to my house tomorrow." I barely slept, wondering what Diane meant. The next day, I drove to her place, a small bungalow an hour away. She greeted me with a hug, her face heavy with something like guilt. We sat in her living room and she poured tea, her hands fidgeting. "Linda's been through things," she started. "Things she doesn't talk about. When David was born, she had a rough time, postpartum bad. She got obsessive, controlling. She pushed everyone away, even me. It got better, but when David met you, something snapped. She thought she was losing him. I frowned, trying to follow. Losing him. But she was so happy at the wedding. Diane sighed, setting her cup down. That's what she wanted you to see. Linda's always been good at hiding how she feels. She didn't want another woman in David's life, not really. When you moved in, it brought back old fears, feeling replaced, irrelevant. I'm not saying it's right, but it's how she is. I felt a chill. So the vial? The pill? Diane hesitated, then shook her head. I don't know about that, but I wouldn't put it past her to do something drastic if she felt cornered. Drastic. The word hung between us. Diane promised to talk to Linda, but I left feeling more unsettled than ever. Was this just jealousy, or was there more? That night, I got a call from David. His voice was different, shaky, urgent. Sarah, you need to come home, now. I almost hung up, but he added, It's about Mom, I found something. My stomach dropped. What? I asked. He didn't answer, just said, Please, I need you here. I drove back, my hands tight on the wheel. When I walked in, David was in the living room, holding the wooden box from Linda's closet. Linda was there too, sitting on the couch, her face pale. Tell her, David said, his voice hard. Linda looked at me, and for the first time, she didn't have that fake smile. It was a mistake, she said, her voice barely a whisper. The vial. It wasn't for you. I didn't believe her. Then who was it for? I demanded. She didn't answer, just looked away, tears in her eyes. David opened the box, pulling out the vial and a new note, one I hadn't seen. It was a prescription, old and faded, for anti-anxiety meds in Linda's name. She's been hiding this, he said. She didn't want anyone to know she's struggling again. I stared at the paper, my mind reeling. Was that it? Was all of this? Months of cold meals, whispered threats, just Linda's mental health unraveling? Or was she lying, covering her tracks? We talked for hours, voices rising and falling, tears mixing with accusations. Linda admitted she'd resented me, felt I was taking David away, but swore the vial was her own medication, nothing sinister. David believed her, or wanted to. I wasn't sure. I looked at her, at the woman I'd once called family, and realized I'd never trust her again. Not fully, but I also saw her differently. Not a monster, but a woman broken by her own fears, lashing out in ways that hurt us all. I didn't move back in. I got my own place, a tiny studio that felt like freedom. David and I are talking, trying to rebuild, but it's slow. Linda's seeing a therapist, or so David says. I don't know if I'll ever forgive her, but I'm learning to forgive myself for staying silent too long, for doubting my own worth. I keep those napkin notes from David, not as a tether to the past, but as a reminder of who I was before all this. Someone who loved fiercely, who deserved better than secrets and shadows. Life's messy, isn't it? We think we know people, our family, our home, but sometimes the truth is hiding in plain sight, waiting for us to be brave enough to see it. I'm still finding my way, but I know one thing. I'll never let anyone make me feel small again. And neither should you.